Have you ever had a stranger ask you something so unexpected that your whole world just stops? That was the vibe that slammed into Stephen Hayes on that crisp Friday afternoon. The kind of day where the sunlight pretends it's summer even though fall air keeps nipping at your neck. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tunning in form? We love seeing how far our stories travel. We love you to subscribe our channel for more interesting single dad stories. Stephen, a 35-year-old single dad just trying to enjoy 5 minutes of peace, was lounging on his favorite weather-beaten bench outside Portland's Harbor Bean Café. He had his black coffee warming his hands, his eyes watching leaves tumble across the sidewalk like they were in their own little dance-off. His daughter Zara was inside with Stephen's sister, their weekly tradition which granted him a rare chunk of silence. A whole 30 minutes. Pure dad gold. He was halfway lost in a daydream, zoning out to the sound of traffic and the soft clinking of mugs behind the cafe window when he felt it, someone standing way too close. Like, "Hey dude, personal bubble?" Close. Stephen glanced up. A young woman stood there, small, fragile-looking, like a strong breeze might snatch her right off the ground. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a messy bun, strands sticking out like she'd been fighting the wind. But her eyes, man, her eyes were the kind that hit you straight in the chest. Hazel glossy, full of this heavy sadness that felt too big for her thin frame. Her voice trembled. I'm sorry, but could you give me a hug?" Stephen froze. A hug from him. Random people asked him for directions, spare change, gum, heck. One guy once asked him to help chase a runaway parrot, but a hug? Never. She saw his shock and immediately started backpedaling, her voice cracking. "I'm sorry. God, that was stupid. Just forget I said anything." She turned like she was about to vanish into thin air. "Hey, wait," Stephen said, standing so fast he nearly sloshed coffee onto his jeans. Something about her, that raw desperation, hit him right in his soft heart dad spot. It reminded him of the kids at the rehab center where he worked. Kids who'd been hurt so deeply they forgot what kindness felt like. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. That question shattered her. Her face crumpled as tears filled her eyes. "No," she whispered. "I'm really not." Stephen didn't think. His arms opened almost on instinct. "See Mir." She stepped into him like someone who'd run out of strength hours ago. The moment his arms wrapped around her, he realized just how fragile she was, trembling, thin, holding on like he was the last solid thing in a world made of fog. She cried quietly into his chest. Stephen held her like he'd hold Zara after a nightmare, soft, steady, patient. When she finally pulled away, wiping her face, she whispered, "I swear I'm not crazy. I'm Eclipse Porter." And Stephen knew this wasn't a random moment. It was the start of something huge. But how could he know that saying yes to one hug would pull him into the most unexpected chapter of his entire life? If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe and return to our channel for more life-changing, emotional, and heartwarming stories. Eclipse Porter sat beside Stephen on that weathered bench, her hands twisting together like she was holding on to her own fingers just to stay grounded. For a minute they just breathed, the kind of silence that wasn't awkward, just heavy, like the quiet before the sky cracks open and starts pouring. Finally, Eclipse drew in a shaky breath. "Do you ever have a day that ruined everything, and somehow it never ends?" Stephen didn't answer, not yet. He'd learned from years of working with injured kids. People open their hearts on their own timeline, not when you poke at them. So Eclipse continued, staring at her lap like her whole life was written there. "2 years ago today," she whispered, "I had my last normal day." She told him she used to be a nurse in Seattle, long shifts, messy scrubs, too much caffeine. She'd been driving home after a brutal 16-hour shift, exhausted but proud. She'd helped a struggling patient take their first steps again. She was running on fumes but happy. Then she reached a red light, one she must have stopped at 100 times before. And then this drunk idiot just barreled through the intersection, she said, voice cracking. Going full speed. Didn't even hit the brakes. Stephen winced as she continued. He hit the driver's side of my car, crushed it like a soda can. Everything went white, then black, then pain so bad it didn't even feel real. She swallowed, blinking hard. They had to cut me out with the jaws of life. My spine was messed up, L4, L5, and my pelvis shattered in 3 places. 3 places. She forced a shaky laugh. Didn't even know a pelvis could break like that. Fun fact, apparently it can. Stephen leaned forward slightly. I'm so sorry. She nodded, eyes distant. 8 months in hospitals, relearning to walk, humiliating, exhausting, painful. I felt like a toddler wobbling on bars while people clapped like I'd just won American Idol. Her voice lowered. And then the bills came, 60, 70,000. Insurance covered some, but not enough. I sank. Fast, Stephen felt something twist in his chest, but Eclipse wasn't done. And the people I needed most, her jaw tightened. Gone. Her parents had cut her off years earlier because she'd married someone they didn't approve of. When she called them from the hospital, broken, terrified, they told her she'd made her choices and hung up. Then her husband left 3 months later, couldn't handle the disability. The pain, the slow recovery, the financial hit. Imagine that, she whispered. You can't walk without a brace, and the man who promised in sickness and health bounces. Stephen couldn't hide the outrage on his face. That's messed up. Eclipse shrugged, but it was the saddest shrug Stephen had ever seen. My friends disappeared, too. People don't know how to deal with someone who's always in pain. They get uncomfortable. So eventually, they just stop coming around. She looked at Stephen then, really looked, her hazel eyes wet. The accident took everything. My health, my career, my marriage, my family, my friends, and today is exactly 2 years since it happened. And I realized this morning I haven't been hugged in all that time. Not once. Stephen felt his throat tighten. What do you say to that? How do you comfort someone who hasn't been touched in 2 years? Before he could answer, she whispered, I know it's too much. You didn't ask for all this. Stephen inhaled deeply. Maybe not, but I'm here. You're not alone right now. The way she looked at him, shock, relief, tiny flickers of hope, he knew the hug wasn't the end of this moment. It was the start of something much bigger. But Stephen had no idea that sharing his own buried pain would change everything for both of them. Stephen wasn't sure why, but something in Eclipse's confession pulled at a place inside him he normally kept locked up tight. Maybe it was the tremble in her voice. Maybe it was the way she looked like someone who'd been fighting a battle alone for way too long. Or maybe, and he hated admitting this, maybe it was because he recognized the emptiness in her eyes. It was the same emptiness he'd seen in his own mirror years ago. She wiped her face, embarrassed. Sorry, I shouldn't dump all this on a stranger. He shook his head. You're not dumping anything, and you're not the only one who's had their life torn apart. Eclipse looked up, surprised, like she wasn't expecting him to offer anything personal back. Stephen exhaled slowly, eyes drifting toward the golden streetlights flickering on as the sun dipped. 3 years ago, my wife didn't come home. Eclipse froze. Michelle was training for a half marathon, Stephen continued quietly. She ran every morning, knew every sidewalk in our neighborhood by heart. Sunshine, rain, didn't matter. That morning wasn't any different. She kissed our daughter, said she'd be back in an hour. He paused, jaw tightening. A neighbor found her collapsed on the sidewalk 3 blocks away. Sudden cardiac arrest. A heart defect no one knew about. One of those freak medical things that doctors say is rare, but doesn't feel rare when it happens to you. Eclipse covered her mouth, eyes wide and glassy. Stephen, oh my God, he nodded. She was 32, healthy, strong, and just gone. Eclipse didn't breathe for a moment. Stephen stared at his hands. I had to explain to a 3-year-old why Mommy wasn't coming home. Try telling that to a toddler who keeps setting an extra plate at dinner. Keeps asking when Mommy can see her new drawings. Keeps waking up crying because she dreamed that she lost me too. His voice cracked just a little, but Eclipse heard it. And then people drifted, he admitted. Friends avoided me because grief makes folks uncomfortable. Couples stopped inviting us to things because I reminded them life isn't fair. Suddenly I was just the single dad, the guy with a tragedy attached to his name. Eclipse blinked hard. Stephen, I didn't know. He offered a small, tired smile. You weren't supposed to. But when you said you felt invisible, I understood. For a long beat, they just sat, two people carrying different kinds of heartbreak, realizing their pain spoke the same language. Then the cafe door slammed open like a mini explosion, and a tiny whirlwind burst through it. "Daddy!" a little girl squealed. Zara, all curly hair, wide honey eyes, and pure chaos energy, sprinted toward him, practically launching herself into his lap. Eclipse's tired face softened instantly, the kind of soft you don't fake. The moment Zara started babbling about dinosaur cookies and frosting disasters, laughter cracked through Eclipse's expression, real laughter, like someone finally turned her lights back on. Stephen caught Eclipse's eye over his daughter's shoulder and mouthed a quiet, apologetic sorry. But Eclipse was smiling, a genuine smile that made her look a little less haunted, maybe a lot less. But Stephen had no clue that introducing Eclipse to his daughter would set off a chain of events neither of them were remotely prepared for. Especially when Zara decided to choose Eclipse for something far bigger than friendship. Zara Hayes wasted zero time making herself comfortable next to Eclipse. She squeezed right between them like she'd been doing it for years, swinging her legs and launching into a non-stop monologue only a 6-year-old could deliver. "Hi, I'm Zara. I'm 6 3/4, which is practically 7, which is practically grown up," she declared proudly. Eclipse laughed, not that tired, polite laugh she gave strangers, but something warmer, something real. "That so?" she asked gently. "Practically grown up, huh?" Zara nodded hard enough to wobble the bench. "Yup, and I love dinosaurs and sparkly sneakers and macaroni, but only the shaped kind, not the boring kind." "Do you like dinosaurs?" Eclipse nodded. "I think Stegosaurus might be my favorite," Zara gasped, her whole face lighting up like a Christmas tree. "No way, me too. They look friendly and also kinda tough." "Like you," Eclipse froze, just for a second. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that said someone had just handed her something she didn't even know she needed. Stephen watched them with a weird ache in his chest, not a bad ache, just the kind that makes you feel too much all at once. Zara had always been picky about people. Super shy, super cautious, but with Eclipse, she just slid right in like a puzzle piece clicking perfectly into place. Stephen cleared his throat. "Zara, sweetheart, you should probably give Miss Eclipse some space." "Nope," Zara said instantly, leaning on Eclipse's arm. "She's comfy, and she smells nice, like vanilla and sunshine," Eclipse snorted. "That might be the first time anyone's ever said that." Stephen shook his head, amused. "Sorry, she asks about 47 questions per minute." Correction," Zara cut in. "You say it's 1,000,000, but I counted once and it was only 47. So you're not good at math." Eclipse laughed again, softer this time, like her ribs didn't hurt when she did it. The three of them walked slowly toward the park afterward, Zara hopping between cracks on the sidewalk like she was avoiding lava. Eclipse winced occasionally, that stiff kind of movement that came with old pain, and Stephen made a mental note to walk a little slower so she didn't feel rushed. At the park, Zara ran off to the monkey bars, leaving Stephen and Eclipse on a bench under an oak tree. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, dappled and warm, and for a moment everything felt calm. "You're good with her," Stephen said quietly. Eclipse blinked. "She's a great kid, easy to be around." "That's not what I mean." Stephen looked at her, really looked. "You talk to her like she matters, like her words count. A lot of adults don't do that." Eclipse stared at the ground. "Kids can tell when someone's faking it. I never want to be one more person who disappoints a child." Stephen's chest tightened. "Hey, don't put yourself in that category." Eclipse shrugged, a small, self-protective gesture. "I'm just saying, I don't want to be someone Zara gets attached to and then loses. She's already lost too much." Stephen's breath caught because she said it so simply, so honestly, so heartbreakingly, and she was right, but he wasn't letting her go that easily. Before he could respond, Zara shouted from across the playground, "Daddy, Miss Eclipse, come push me. I want to see into tomorrow." Eclipse laughed, wiping a quick tear nobody else noticed. "Guess that's our cue." Stephen smiled back, but inside, something big was shifting, something dangerous, something he wasn't ready to name. But Stephen had no idea the universe was about to test all three of them because someone else was watching their growing bond, and that person was not happy about it. The weeks that followed felt strangely normal, or at least the closest thing to normal Stephen had felt in years. Coffee meetups turned into shared lunches, which turned into park afternoons, which turned into Eclipse slowly, almost accidentally, becoming part of their little family rhythm. And Stephen didn't miss the shift. Zara would draw pictures of the three of them. Eclipse started sending Stephen memes late at night about single dad problems. They both began finishing each other's sarcastic comments like some weird inside joke telepathy. But Stephen tried not to think too hard about it. Feelings were messy. Life was messy. And he already had enough mess to manage. Until the evening, everything flipped. It was a stormy Thursday when the doorbell rang, sharp, unexpected, and way too early for Eclipse to be arriving for dinner. Zara was at the kitchen table coloring, humming loudly off-key. Stephen wiped his hands on a dish towel and opened the door. His stomach dropped. Standing on the porch were Paul and Celeste Brennan, his late wife's parents. The last people he ever expected to see. They looked older than he remembered, grief carved into their features like permanent lines. They stepped inside with stiff politeness, the air instantly turning colder. "Stephen," Celeste said, scanning the living room like she was searching for evidence of a crime. "We need to talk." He had a bad feeling, a terrible feeling. Paul cleared his throat. "We've been concerned." Stephen frowned. "About what?" Celeste's eyes landed on the dining table, 3 placemats. "Expecting company?" she asked sharply. Stephen felt the trap tightening. "Eclipse is coming over for dinner." Celeste's face hardened. "Yes, that's exactly what we want to discuss." Stephen's pulse kicked up. "What do you mean?" Paul pulled out his phone, swiping through screenshots, documents, social profiles, addresses. "We did some digging," Paul announced. "This woman, Eclipse Porter, has significant medical debt. Lives in a dangerous area, receives disability checks, divorced, estranged from her family. Her life is unstable." Stephen felt his jaw clench. "You investigated her?" Celeste crossed her arms. "We are thinking of Zara. You've allowed a woman with serious issues into our granddaughter's life." Stephen's voice dropped cold. "She's a good person." "A broken person," Celeste snapped. "Zara needs stability, not someone who could fall apart any minute." Stephen stepped closer, anger radiating off him. "You weren't here for Zara for 2 years. 2 years. You didn't show up for her birthday, holidays, nothing. And now you think you get to waltz in and judge who I let into her life." Paul exhaled sharply. "If we believe Zara is being put at risk, we'll petition for grandparent visitation. Maybe even custody." The words hit like bullets. Stephen felt the whole room tilt. "You're threatening to take my daughter from me," he whispered. "We're protecting her," Celeste said, though her voice wasn't half as steady as she tried to make it. Stephen pointed to the door. "Get out!" They left, but their threat didn't. It sat on Stephen's chest like a weight he couldn't lift. 30 minutes later, Eclipse arrived, hair damp from the rain, holding a container of brownies she'd overfilled with chocolate chips. She stepped inside, smiling, until she saw Stephen's face. "What happened?" she asked softly. He told her everything. He watched the color drain from her cheeks. He watched her shoulders curl inward. He watched the light leave her eyes. "Stephen," she whispered, "maybe they're right. No, I'm a burden. I have baggage. I can't drag you and Zara into my problems." Her voice broke. "You deserve someone whole, not someone like me." "Eclipse, stop. I should give you space," she whispered, backing away. "I don't want to ruin your life, or Zara's." And before Stephen could reach her, touch her, convince her, she was gone. But walking away didn't stop the damage. It only made the darkness return for all three of them, and soon everything would get even worse. The days after Eclipse walked out felt like someone had pulled the plug on the color in Stephen's world. Everything turned muted, quiet. He still made lunch for Zara, still clocked in at work, still folded laundry and packed school snacks, but there was this ache living under every breath, like his chest forgot how to work right. And Zara stopped being Zara. The kid who normally asked questions faster than a squirrel on espresso barely spoke at all. She'd sit in the back seat twirling a strand of hair, staring out the window with this tiny frown that didn't belong on a 6-year-old's face. One night while Stephen tucked her in, she finally whispered, "Daddy, did Miss Eclipse stop loving us?" Stephen's heart cracked clean in two. "Oh, Jellybean, no, she didn't stop loving us." "Then why isn't she here?" Zara asked, lip trembling. "She promised she'd come to my school play. She promised she'd see my new drawing. She promised she wouldn't disappear." Stephen swallowed hard because Daddy panicked, because Daddy didn't fight hard enough, because adults mess things up even when they try their best. He smoothed a curl off her forehead. "She's going through something really hard, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups get scared and make choices that hurt, even when they don't want to." Zara sniffed. "We already lost Mommy. I don't want to lose Miss Eclipse, too." That one line nearly floored him. After she drifted to sleep, Stephen sat in the hallway with his head in his hands, knowing one thing crystal clear. He had to fix this. He needed to fix this, not just for him, for Zara, but Eclipse wasn't making it easy. She barely responded to his texts, short replies like "I'm okay, just busy," or "thanks for checking in." No emojis, no jokes, no warmth. He'd call, and she'd pick up with a voice that sounded like she'd been crying for hours, then tell him she needed rest. Meanwhile, Stephen's in-laws backed off when their lawyer informed them they had zero chance at custody, something Stephen should have celebrated. But instead, it just made him realize how much damage they'd already caused. Every night he sat with his phone in hand, typing a message and deleting it. "I need you," delete. "Zara misses you," delete. "Please come back," delete. He'd never felt so helpless. And Eclipse, she wasn't doing any better. Back in her tiny apartment, she spent her evenings curled up with a heating pad on her back, staring at photos of Stephen and Zara. Photos she kept telling herself to delete but couldn't. She'd scroll through them until her chest hurt, then shove the phone under a pillow like it burned. Because leaving had felt like the right thing, until it didn't. Now every quiet moment felt like drowning. Every night felt longer. Every morning felt heavier. She missed the laughter. She missed Stephen's dumb dad jokes. She missed Zara's little hand slipping into hers like it belonged there. But she believed leaving protected them. And that belief was the only thing keeping her from running right back, until Zara had enough. Saturday morning, she marched up to Stephen with that look, the one that meant Daddy's about to get steamrolled. "I need markers, paper, and tape," she declared. I'm fixing this today. 2 hours later, they were standing outside Eclipse's apartment again. Zara knocked with the confidence of someone who pays rent. The door opened. Eclipse stood there, eyes swollen, hair messy, sweatshirt wrinkled. Every inch of her screaming she hadn't slept in days. When she saw Zara holding a picture of 3 stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun, she broke. Right there in the doorway. But what Eclipse didn't know was that Stephen wasn't just here for an apology. He was here to confess something that would change everything. Eclipse stood frozen in her doorway, the soft paper trembling between her fingers. Zara had drawn 3 stick figures, one tall with spiky hair, Stephen, one small with curly scribbles, herself, and one with long, wavy lines, Eclipse. Above them, in wobbly but determined handwriting, were 2 words, "Oh, you are family." Eclipse pressed a hand to her mouth, tears streaming as she crouched down. Zara immediately wrapped her arms around Eclipse's waist like she'd been waiting weeks for this moment. "I made this for you," Zara said, voice tiny but determined. "Because you're still part of us, even if you're sad, even if you think you're broken. Daddy says broken stuff can be fixed." Eclipse let out a soft, watery laugh. "Your dad really said that?" "Uh-huh, Daddy fixes people at his job, and he said broken doesn't mean bad, it just means something hard happened." Zara squeezed her tighter. "So you're like a superhero. 'Cause you survived something super scary." Eclipse's whole body shook. She hadn't been anyone's anything in so long. But here was this little girl declaring her family before Eclipse even dared imagine it. Stephen stepped inside slowly, watching them with an expression that was half heartbreak, half hope. Once Zara wandered into the tiny living room to inspect Eclipse's bookshelf, Stephen approached her gently. "Eclipse," he said quietly, "we need to talk." She straightened, bracing herself. "I know, Stephen, I shouldn't be here. I make everything harder. Your in-laws were right, and—" "No," he said firmly, stepping closer. "They weren't. Not even a little. But they'll think. I don't care what they think." His voice softened. "I care what you think," her breath hitched. I think you deserve someone who isn't a disaster," Stephen exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "You're not a disaster. You're someone who went through hell and still gets up every day. That's strength, Eclipse, not weakness." She stared at him like she didn't believe a word. So he took one more step, close enough for her to feel the warmth of him. "These last 3 weeks without you," Stephen's voice cracked. "Everything felt wrong, like the world went back to grayscale. Zara cried every night. I barely slept. You weren't a problem in our lives. You were the part that made everything lighter." Her chin trembled. "Stephen, please don't say things you'll regret." He shook his head. "No regrets, not this, Eclipse. His voice dropped. "I love you." Her eyes widened like he'd just spoken a language she'd forgotten existed. "I know it might seem fast," he continued, "but the truth is you showed up when I didn't know I needed anyone. You cared about Zara like she mattered. You cared about me like I wasn't just the single dad. And I haven't felt that in a long time." Eclipse's hand flew to her chest, like she needed to hold her heart in place. "Stephen," she whispered, barely audible, "I love you too. I've loved you for months. I was just terrified. I didn't want to ruin your life." "You could never ruin it," he said softly, taking her hands. "If anything, you brought it back." Before either of them could say another word, Zara waddled over, hands on her hips like a tiny referee. "Okay, are you two gonna kiss now?" she asked loudly. "Because every movie does that part right here." Stephen and Eclipse burst into teary laughter. "Maybe," Stephen said, brushing a thumb across Eclipse's cheek. "Soon," Zara huffed dramatically. "Ugh, adults take forever." Eclipse pulled Zara into her arms, kissing the top of her head as Stephen wrapped his hand around Eclipse's back, steady and sure. And in that tiny, imperfect apartment, something finally clicked into place. But even love, once found, comes with one final test, and tomorrow would bring a choice that could shape their future forever. The next morning felt different, not loud or dramatic, just calm. The kind of calm that comes after a storm finally runs out of lightning. Stephen made pancakes in Eclipse's tiny kitchen while she and Zara debated whether aliens preferred waffles or toast. Eclipse kept smiling at the girl across the table, a small, disbelieving smile, like she kept waiting to wake up and find it all gone. But it wasn't. Not this time. After breakfast, Solaris sunlight drifted through the curtains as Stephen stepped onto the balcony with Eclipse. She hugged her sweater around herself, bracing for whatever conversation was coming. "I need to say something," Eclipse murmured. "And I want to say it before fear makes me chicken out." Stephen turned to her patient. "I've spent so long believing I ruin every good thing I touch," she whispered. "My family cut me off. My marriage fell apart. My body failed me in ways I couldn't control. And after all that, I thought staying alone was the safest option for everyone." Stephen reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "But yesterday," she continued, voice shaking, "when Zara hugged me, when she showed me that drawing," she exhaled a trembling breath. "That was the first time in years I felt like I belonged somewhere. Not because I was needed, but because I was wanted." Stephen's eyes softened. "You are wanted by both of us," she swallowed. "Are you sure? Because your life is complicated, Stephen. You're a single dad. I'm still healing." She gestured toward her body. "More broken bits than bubble wrap." Stephen stepped closer. "And what if I like bubble wrap?" She snorted, a real laugh, then immediately covered her face as tears spilled over. "Stop making me laugh while I'm crying, it's rude." He gently pulled her into his arms. "You're not broken, Eclipse, you're someone who survived." She leaned into him, the tension melting from her shoulders. "I want to be part of your life," she whispered. "Part of your family if you'll have me." Stephen kissed the top of her hair. "We already do." Before Eclipse could speak, Zara slid the balcony door open with the dramatic flair of a soap opera character. "Hello," she called. "Are you guys done being mushy? Because I need someone to braid my hair and Daddy absolutely stinks at it." Eclipse laughed, wiping her cheeks. "Sweetie, I'd love to." Zara brightened like a supernova. "Good. Because I've been waiting forever. Like 5 minutes." Stephen watched them walk inside, Eclipse guiding Zara chattering non-stop, and something warm bloomed in his chest. Something steady, something right. That evening, the three of them sat on the old bench outside Harbor Bean Café, the same one where everything began. Eclipse leaned her head on Stephen's shoulder while Zara fed ducks with the special duck food. She insisted tasted better than bread. Eclipse whispered, "Do you ever think about how weird it is that one small moment can change everything?" Stephen squeezed her hand. "It wasn't weird, it was meant." "Well," she said softly, "thank you for saying yes." He smiled. "Thank you for asking." Zara ran back toward them, hair braided, face glowing. She squeezed between them and grabbed both their hands. "We're a team now," she declared. "Like the ultimate friendship squad." Stephen chuckled. "Is that our official name?" "Yup," Zara said proudly. "And it's forever." Eclipse looked at Stephen, eyes shining. Forever didn't feel scary anymore. It felt like home. In the end, this wasn't a story about tragedy or grief or what life takes from you. It was a story about one moment of courage, a woman asking for a hug, and one moment of kindness, a man saying yes. Two people, both shattered in different ways, discovered that healing doesn't always come from standing alone. Sometimes it comes from sitting on a park bench, sharing your worst truths with someone who isn't afraid to hold them. Stephen thought Eclipse needed saving. Eclipse thought she was too broken to deserve love. But Zara, wise beyond her years, saw it first. They weren't missing pieces. They were pieces that finally fit, and together they weren't invisible anymore. They weren't alone. They were a family. A beautifully imperfect, wonderfully chaotic, fiercely loving family built from a single moment of bravery. A hug, the first of many.